Are you on? I think you're supposed to say action. I'm just kidding, I'm by myself. Wandering Winterfield's video number 1, or 0. I think it's 0 because I've never done a video at all before. Never talked to a camera before. I've never even edited a video before. I don't know what software I'm gonna use. I've never even used a camera before that's not an iPhone. I have, however, turned wrenches before. That part will be comfortable for me. So with that all being said, it should be interesting. I have my little notes here, which I think you're supposed to have when you make a video so you don't forget anything. Learned that from Trail Recon. There's a plane, I don't know if you can hear that. So I don't like when videos have long intros or a lot of talking before the action starts. This video will be my only exception to that, hopefully. I don't like clickbait titles, thumbnails of an attention grabber of something that's not even in the video. And I really don't like when people beg for subscriptions and likes. So don't like this and don't subscribe, I'm just kidding. I obviously have a lot of learning to do. Learn how to speak to a camera and have it sound more natural than I probably sound right now. Now, one more thing before I start actually turning wrenches. This is not my house, but I brought all of my tools here, and right now they're a mess. There's tools in that cooler right there, and this whole thing's a mess. So I'm gonna organize it real fast. Then in post-production, I will try to speed that up. I don't know how to do that yet, but we'll do it. And then I'll start turning wrenches. This thing is a mess. And this is loaded up with tools that need to go back into the box. Caffeine. All right, not my best work, but it's good enough to do this today. Passenger side's a little over 25 inches. Driver's side was a little under 25 inches. Let's see if we can fix that. Before you start working on your truck, you need to prepare it. First, chock the front tires, break the torque on the rear tires, jack the rear tires off the ground, finish removing the rear tires, put jack stands under your truck using the frame, and then lower the axle a little bit so it's in its natural position. Safety first. Alright, so I'm going to be installing those super heavy duty leaf springs from Davidson's USA. They're rated at a 800 to 1,000 pound constant load, which is a lot heavier duty than the Dakars that I have in there right now. This Dakar heavy duty leaf pack is rated at a 600 pound constant load. So the new one should be significantly stronger, which is important because I'm going to have a camper on my truck while I live out of it, which I'll talk about later. You can see they have that W thing going on, pretty much inevitable. They have served me really well, and I've abused the hell out of them. I actually had 2,600 pounds of rock in my truck, which is more than 1,000 pounds over the payload rating for these trucks. The thing I don't like about them is how squeaky they are. Anyone who has these leaf springs knows what I'm talking about with the squeak. Kind of embarrassing in public. People probably think your truck's about to fall apart. So I'm hoping the ones I install don't squeak that much. Along with the new leaf springs, I'm going to install these Firestone air springs. They're basically airbags that go above the leaf spring to help with the load. And then I have these Daystar cradles that are for the airbags, and they make it so you can basically articulate, flex your truck the same way you would if you didn't have airbags, which is kind of cool. Super set. Instructions. Replacing leaf springs on your own is probably one of the easier things you can do to your truck, so I wouldn't recommend having a mechanic do this for you. It's a pretty quick job, especially when you know torque specs and socket size. You can do this with basic hand tools, and you can do it by yourself. Unlike the front of the truck, when you're done, you won't need to go get an alignment. The first thing you're going to want to do is remove the lower shock bracket bolt. It's a 17mm socket. Don't be like me and use a non-impact socket with an impact gun if you want to keep your tools from breaking. Now that you have the nut off, you can tap the bolt out. To keep things organized, I like to put bolts back where they came from, if you can. Now, because I'm only replacing the leaf springs and not the shock, that's all you need to do for the shock. You don't have to take it off at the top as well. Next, remove this brake cable bracket here. It's a 12mm socket. Now you can remove your U-bolts. This did not break the torque. Breaker bar. Now it's important that you set this plate aside the same way it came off because it doesn't need to go back on the same way it came off. Again, to keep things organized, I like to put it back. And if you're going to be reusing rusty components like this, you can clean it with a metal brush, which I'll do later. And if you still have this crappy stock bump stop, you can pull that off now. At this point, you can lower the jack that's holding the axle up to relieve some of the tension on the leaf springs until you have about an inch or two of a gap right here between the axle and this leaf spring pack. And something I forgot to mention is that you should have done every step up to this point on both sides. If you haven't, you won't be able to get this side down because the other side will be holding it up. While this is coming down, you want to watch these brake lines here. If you have the stock brake lines, they're pretty short and they will probably pull. You don't want them to pull. These are aftermarket brake lines, which are a lot longer, so I'll be okay. I don't know if you saw it there, but the axle just rolled forward. You want to try to avoid that. I didn't avoid it because I was holding the camera. You can kind of see my axle rolled forward on the jack. That's okay, I'll be able to fix that. With the tension now off the leaf springs, you can remove the front leaf spring bolt with a 19mm wrench on the back and a 19mm socket on the front. Sometimes you can keep going with the socket after the nut's off, and it will actually pull it out for you. So I had to jack the axle back up to move the leaf springs up a little bit to remove some tension off that bolt. Probably an easier way to get it out, but what you just saw me do works, so whatever. When you're wiggling this bolt out though at the end, just be careful not to damage those threads. Now that the front's out, go to the rear and remove the upper shackle bolt in the same way you did the front. Huh?
Me and Jake can move it now.
Okay.
Okay.
No. Now that that's all done, we can remove this crusty leaf spring pack. It's going to be easier if you have help, but I don't. Don't do that. That's how you break your cables. You can pull that upper shackle bolt from before and remove the shackle. A lot of people replace these shackles to something heavier duty, and I will be doing that, but not in this video. Now that you have one out, go ahead and remove the other side the same way you did this one. And then I'll show you how to prepare the new leaf springs to be installed. First, I just want to compare these two. To be honest, just looking at them from here, the bottom springs on the old one look a lot thicker, but the new ones are supposed to have a much higher weight rating, so we shall see. I'm going to try this to bang out the sleeve from the old shackle. Alright, that method was not even close to working, so I just ran to Harbor Freight. And I got a ball joint puller, which hopefully will work because it was 90 bucks. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. Now I need to get that socket out and the rest of the rubber and then clean it. The socket's out. Alright, 10 hours later, I only got that thing out. Now to finish with that rubber. I was able to get the second bushing and sleeve out a lot faster than the first one because of what I learned from the first time. Now I need to clean them so we can put the new bushings in. Removing this outer bushing sleeve from the shackle was extremely difficult. I tried everything I could on my own. I went to Home Depot, I bought a torch. I tried cutting them out, I tried hammering them out, I tried pressing them out, I tried chiseling them out, and I tried torching them out, and nothing would work. I soaked this in a rust dissolver, but that didn't help. So I ended up taking it to my local 4x4 shop, Extreme 4-Wheel Drive in St. James, which is on Long Island, New York. They got it out in about 3 minutes.
That's how we do it. Extreme, baby.
It just goes to show what having better tools can do for you. Now that this little hiccup has been dealt with, I can clean the shackles and show you how to put the new bushings in. So I'm just going to spray the inside of the shackle with brake cleaner and then scrub it with a steel brush. When you're working with brake cleaner on parts like this, you're going to want to... I'm going to use marine grease for my bushings. It's supposed to be pretty heavy duty and hold up well in wetness. Yep, that's for me trying to get good camera angles while I do this. Now we can finally install the new leaf springs into the truck. Before we go under the truck, wipe the blood off the leaf springs from the part where you dropped them on your finger. Then we're going to install the shackle onto the back of the leaf spring. Take note of which side of the leaf spring is the rear for your model. With these Davidsons, this logo goes in the front, so the shackle will go on this side. After you found the rear of the leaf spring, install the shackle back on the leaf spring loosely. Make sure to put the bolt back in the same way it came out. In this case, the head of the bolt goes underneath the truck. Keep this nut loose for now. Now we can drop the leaf pack back onto the axle. This part can be tricky when you're by yourself because these are really heavy. So I hope watching me do this alone will be entertaining. There's a set screw here in the middle of the leaf springs that go into a little hole in the axle. It's not that hard to get that lined up so it drops in. Once you have them over the axle, you'll need to fiddle with it until these holes line up so you can put the front bolt in. Put the nut and bolt on the back and then we will tighten that one down later. Now do the same for the rear. Learning stuff. So this is a totally different day. I didn't get to properly finish filming the install part because I was 8 hours away from a camping trip that I had to be on, and the rain was starting to come down hard and I wasn't sure how to film without ruining the camera. The good news is I'm going to take the tire back off and show you guys how to finish installing your leaf springs and properly torque the bolts. The other good news is no more squeak. Alright, so I left off trying to get this bolt through. It was actually kind of difficult for me because the crappy stock shackle was bent, but I got it in. So when you have it in, snug it down, don't torque it yet. Once you have the leaf spring bolt through and snug down, line the guide pin up that's at the bottom of the leaf springs into the hole that's in the axle, and then you can put the U-bolts on. Remember to put your bump stop back on, and then throw the U-bolts over it. With your U-bolts and bump stop back on, put the bottom plate back on the same way it came off, and then start tightening these 4 nuts in a star pattern like you would a wheel. Snug them down, but don't torque them yet. Once you have it snugged down, if the thread showing is not almost the same, you should loosen them back up and fix it. Once your U-bolts are snugged down, you can come back to the lower shock bolt, put it through the same way it came out like this, and then snug that down as well. Don't torque it yet, we're going to torque all these bolts later. Final thing to reinstall before we start torquing bolts is the parking brake bracket. I think the official torque spec for this bolt is 12 foot-pounds, but I just used PFT. Once all of those bolts are snug down with your socket wrench, it's time to break out your torque wrench and finish the job. First, reinstall the tire and torque the lug nuts to whatever you torque the other 3 tires to. Then you need to get in your bed or on your rear bumper and jump around a little bit so everything properly seats from the weight of the truck. Now, in just about every video you watch or every guide you read, you're probably going to find slightly different torque specs. You can use the official Toyota service manual to find these torque specs, or go by what I say here, or what the torque specs are in your instructions for any of your aftermarket parts. Torque the 4 U-bolt nuts in a star pattern to about 100 foot-pounds. Some people go up to 120, some people stop at 90. Then come back to your front leaf spring bolt and torque it to about 90 foot-pounds. Shoot on over to the shackle bolts in the rear and torque those to 90 foot-pounds as well. And finally, head under the truck to your lower shock bolt and torque that to about 75 foot-pounds, or whatever your aftermarket shock manufacturer calls for. Once everything's been torqued, you're pretty much done. If you want, you can come jump around in your bed again or drive the truck around the block and then take some measurements like I did to see how much lift you gain. The absolute final and mandatory step is to take some photos of your new truck, because we all know we really only do this stuff for the gram anyway, right? Thank you for watching my hack job of a video that took about 10 real life days to film and edit due to rain and other circumstances. But I'm glad I finally got it done, and I hope it was helpful to someone. And that's a wrap. The final thing I want to mention real quick is that I run a 3rd Gen Tacoma website called Tacoma3G.com. 3rd Gen Tacoma, 2016 and higher or newer Toyota Tacomas. You should come join us on the forum. We're friendly and we're very knowledgeable there. So any question you might have about these trucks, we should be able to get answered for you.